Picture somebody living in a van and you probably picture somebody in their 20s. The fastest growing group in that population is people over 60. A rent increase, one hospital bill, a pension that quietly stopped covering the gap, and the van parked at the far end of the lot stops being somebody else's story. The people who have been doing this longest have worked out how to make it survivable, and almost none of what they know costs money. 17 of those methods are in this video. Together they come to more than $5,000 a year, and I'll show you that arithmetic at the end so you can check it yourself. Let's start with number 17. Trick 17. In July, the inside of a parked van reaches 115 degrees by 2 in the afternoon. A roof fan barely touches it. Then in January, that same vehicle drops below freezing, and you wake up with your breath fogging the windshield. People die of both, and every year some of them do. The heat isn't coming through the walls, it's coming through the glass. Windows are the largest thermal opening in any vehicle, and radiant heat pours straight through them in both directions. The fix is reflective bubble insulation, the silver foil material sold in rolls at any hardware store for about $30. Cut cardboard templates for every window first. Then cut the foil roughly a quarter-inch oversized so it wedges into the frame under tension and holds itself in place without tape or adhesive. Windshield, door glass, rear windows, all of it. The temperature difference is immediate, and there's a second thing it does that matters just as much. It blacks the interior out completely so nobody walking past at night can tell whether anyone is inside. One roll covers an entire vehicle and lasts years. So where does a person get a hot shower? Trick 16. Campground showers cost money. Truck stop showers cost more. Building one into a vehicle eats space and water nobody has to spare. Most people in this situation end up washing in a gas station restroom within the first 3 weeks and feeling awful about it. The ones who last solve it with a gym membership, and it isn't really about exercise. Planet Fitness and the other national chains have locations in nearly every mid-sized town in the country, and the tier that gets you into any club anywhere runs around $25 a month. What that buys is a hot shower with real water pressure every single day, a clean restroom, a locked building with staff in it, air conditioning in August, heat in February, and a chair to sit in that isn't the driver's seat. Compare that against $15 to $40 a night just for campground shower access. One membership replaces 4 separate expenses at once, and for anyone over 60, having somewhere warm and indoors to go on a bad weather day is worth more than the number suggests. Now, the least interesting trick on this list, which is also the one that decides how much everything else costs you. Trick 15. You live in a vehicle, but the DMV, your insurance company, your bank, and the Social Security Administration all want a physical street address. Using a family member's house creates problems for both of you, and a post office box gets rejected outright by most state motor vehicle departments. Full-time travelers solve this with a domicile state and a mail forwarding service. South Dakota, Texas, and Florida have all built the infrastructure for exactly this. Escapees in Texas and the mail services in Box Elder, South Dakota, provide a real street address that the DMV accepts, receive your mail, scan the envelopes so you can read them online, and ship batches to whatever general delivery post office you name. 3 reasons this matters more than it sounds. None of those states charge income tax. Registration and insurance rates vary enormously between states, sometimes by more than $1,000 a year on the same vehicle. And the third one, nobody mentions. If you're on Medicare, your domicile choice decides your coverage. Original Medicare with a supplement plan works with any provider in the country that accepts Medicare, which is exactly what you need when you don't know what county you'll be in next month. Medicare Advantage plans are built around a local provider network tied to where you live, and outside that network you're paying full freight or driving back across 3 states for a doctor's appointment. People get this wrong and find out at the worst possible time. It takes 1 day in person to set up and then it runs itself. Trick 14. 11 at night. A quiet residential street, park under a streetlight, and try to sleep. At 1:30, a flashlight hits the window. That knock happens because of where you parked, not who you are. And there's a ranking that experienced people follow. Big box retail lots sit at the top, though this is changing and you need to hear it. Walmart tolerated overnight parking for decades, but a growing number of individual stores no longer permit it, and some towns have banned it outright. Store policy now varies location to location, so the ranking only works if you check. Second are truck stops and travel centers, open around the clock, well lit, full of people who understand vehicles. Third are casino lots, which almost universally allow it because they want you walking through the door. Fourth are highway rest areas, legal in most states for a limited number of hours. And the move that changes the whole equation is walking inside and asking the night manager. 90 seconds of politeness turns a gamble into permission, and buying something small while you're in there is the reason managers remember you kindly. There's also a version of this where you get paid. Work amping means hosting a campground site, checking people in, keeping the restroom stocked, in exchange for a free spot with hookups and sometimes an hourly wage on top. State parks and private campgrounds across the country run on retirees doing exactly this, and the work is light enough that it suits people who don't want a real job anymore. Trick 13. Cases of bottled water cost $1 or more per gallon for something that falls out of the sky, and the empties pile up in a vehicle with nowhere to put them. Run 2 tanks instead. One is drinking water, usually a pair of 7-gallon rigid jugs with a spigot, kept clean and used for nothing else. The second is wash water for dishes and rinsing, which doesn't need to be pristine. Refill points are everywhere once you start looking for them. Most supermarkets have reverse osmosis machines out front charging pennies a gallon. Municipal parks, campgrounds, cemeteries, and visitor centers all have potable spigots, and nobody has ever questioned a man filling a jug at a cemetery tap. Carry a short food-grade hose and a universal faucet adapter, because about half the spigots you find won't fit standard hose thread without one. 14 gallons runs one person roughly a week with careful use, and the whole setup pays for itself in about 2 months. Trick 12. 98 degrees outside, you need internet. The phone hotspot is throttled, and running air conditioning means running the engine. The public library solves every part of that for nothing. Real bandwidth, power outlets, clean restrooms, climate control, tables to work at, and a parking lot where a vehicle sitting there at midday is completely unremarkable. A library card unlocks free ebooks, audiobooks for long drives, and streaming services. Most branches have a printer, which matters more than you'd expect when you're handling vehicle registration, insurance renewal, or Social Security paperwork with no home office. Libraries are the most underused resource in this entire situation. Quiet, safe, warm in winter and cool in summer, nobody bothers you, and the staff are the least judgmental people you'll meet all week. That's 4 expenses gone already, and we're not halfway. Trick 11. There are hundreds of millions of acres of public land across the western United States where camping is legally permitted, and the maps that show you exactly where those boundaries fall are free to download. Bureau of Land Management and National Forest land both allow dispersed camping. You can park and stay on most of it at no cost. Every national forest publishes a motor vehicle use map, free to download, showing exactly which forest roads permit vehicle camping and how far off the road you're allowed to park. The Bureau of Land Management publishes similar maps marking public boundaries against private ranch land. Download them before you lose signal, because you will lose signal. 2 rules people get wrong. The stay limit is 14 days, and when it's up, you don't just roll down the road a few miles. Most Bureau of Land Management districts require you to relocate 25 miles or more, and many limit you to 14 days out of any 28 in a given area. Read the district rules because rangers do check and the fine isn't small. And if you're 62 or older, the America the Beautiful Senior Pass costs $80 once and lasts the rest of your life. It covers entrance to every national park and federal recreation site, and it cuts your fee in half at federal campgrounds nationwide. $80 one time. People spend entire summers in the mountains of Colorado, Utah, and Arizona this way, pine forest out the back doors, paying nothing. Trick 10. Cooking is where propane disappears, and a refill means driving to a supplier, which means burning fuel to buy fuel. The method that fixes it is older than the stove in the vehicle. Bring the pot to a hard rolling boil. Hold it there 5 minutes. Then take it off the flame, lid clamped down tight, and bury the entire pot in a cooler packed with towels or blankets. The insulation traps the heat and the food keeps cooking for the next 2 to 4 hours on zero fuel. Beans, rice, lentils, stew, chili, oatmeal, tough cuts of meat, they all finish perfectly. You put it together in the morning, drive all day, and open a hot meal that evening. A basic cooler and a stack of old towels works as well as any dedicated thermal cooker sold for $100. Propane spent on cooking drops by more than half, and you stop babysitting an open flame inside a moving vehicle. Which brings us to the thing that quietly kills people every winter. Trick 9. You wake up and there's water running down the inside of the walls. Nothing is leaking. That water is coming out of you. A sleeping adult exhales roughly a pint of water vapor overnight, and cooking adds more. In a sealed metal box, that moisture hits cold steel, condenses, and soaks into the insulation. Within a season, there's mold growing behind panels you can't reach, and that's the number one reason builds get torn out and started over. Control it 3 ways. Ventilation first, which means cracking 2 windows on opposite sides even in January because crossflow is what carries the moisture out. Then desiccant, the calcium chloride tubs sold in any hardware store for a few dollars, placed under the bed and in cabinets and refilled every few weeks. And third, and this one is not optional, a carbon monoxide detector mounted at head height wherever you sleep, if there is any propane appliance in that vehicle. Propane heaters and generators kill people in enclosed vehicles every single winter, and almost always in the cold snap when everyone seals the windows to stay warm. The detector costs about what a tank of gas does. Buy it before you buy anything else on this list. Trick 8. It gets uncomfortable inside, so you start the engine and run the heat for 20 minutes. Then again after dinner. Then again at 3 in the morning. An idling engine burns roughly half a gallon an hour, while moving you exactly nowhere. A few hours a day of that becomes one of the largest expenses you have. And it never shows up as a trip, so it never feels like spending it. It also stacks hours onto a motor you can't afford to replace. And a running engine in a dark lot at 2 in the morning is the single fastest way to get somebody's attention. Let the insulation do the work instead of the fuel. Reflective panels in the windows, plus a small 12-volt fan running off the house battery, holds a comfortable interior for a fraction of a cent per hour. In cold weather, a sleeping bag rated below the temperature you actually expect, plus a wool blanket over the top, beats a running engine every night of the week. Cutting 3 hours of daily idling saves $800 to $1,500 a year in fuel alone. Quick thing before the last 7, because these are the ones that move the number most. If this is useful, subscribe. I put one of these out every week, and this is the kind of information that's worth a great deal more before you need it than after. And if you want all of it written down, I put together the Van Life Savings Manual. Every trick in this video with the checklists, the state-by-state registration numbers, and the ones that ran too long to fit here. Link is in the description. Trick 7. It's November. The solar panels are producing almost nothing. The sky has been gray for 9 days, and you're rationing power. Solar is the thing everyone installs first, and the thing that fails at exactly the moment you need it. But there's already a generator bolted to the front of that vehicle. The alternator produces far more electricity than any roof panel ever will, and a DC to DC charger sends that power into the house battery safely while you drive. It sits between the starter battery and the house battery, regulates the voltage, and protects the alternator from being cooked by a hungry lithium bank. 1 hour of highway driving can put in more energy than a full, cloudy day of panels, which is why experienced people treat driving days as charging days and plan around it. For anyone over 60, this stops being a convenience question. If you run a CPAP machine at night, that's a real overnight draw, and it has to be there every single night, not on the nights the sun cooperated. Same story if you have insulin or any other medication that has to stay refrigerated. Those 2 things alone should decide the size of your battery bank, and they're the reason you don't rely on solar alone. Keep the panels for the weeks you're parked. Just don't let them be the only plan. Trick 6. Those little green disposable propane cylinders are cheap, and they're sold at every gas station in America, which is exactly why people keep buying them. Look at the cost per pound. Those 1-pound bottles work out to several times the price of the same propane bought in bulk and you're throwing away a steel cylinder every couple of days. Switch to a 20-pound refillable tank, the standard barbecue size, mounted securely in a vented compartment or on an exterior rack. Add a hose adapter and it runs the same stove and the same heater you're using now. Refills at a hardware store or propane dealer cost a fraction per pound, and one tank runs most people a month of cooking. One thing to be absolutely clear about: do not refill the disposable green cylinders. They were never built for repeated pressurization, the valves fail, and people have been badly hurt doing it. Buy the refillable tank. That swap saves a couple $100s a year and a great deal of trash. Trick 5. You've been driving all day, you're tired, there's a diner right there, and it's $20. Do that 4 times a week and you've spent more on food than most people spend on rent. Restaurant meals quietly outrank fuel and parking combined as a budget killer, and it never once feels like a decision at the time. What fixes it is a system, not discipline. Freeze water in gallon jugs anywhere you have power and use those as cooler ice instead of bagged ice. They last about 3 times as long, they don't flood the food with meltwater, and when they thaw, you drink them. Buy dry goods in bulk: rice, beans, lentils, oats, pasta, because they need no refrigeration, and they're the cheapest calories in the country. Build every meal around one pot so you're washing one pot. And prep on the day you have water access, not on the day you're hungry in a parking lot. Cutting restaurant meals down to once a week saves well over $1,000 a year, and we're going to add that to the total shortly. Trick 4. 200 miles from anywhere. The temperature gauge climbs into the red, and now you're paying for a tow, a shop rate you have no leverage over, a motel while it sits, and food you didn't plan for. One roadside breakdown routinely runs $2,000 to $4,000, which erases everything else on this list in a single afternoon. So the people who stay out there treat maintenance as the saving strategy, not as a chore. Oil changed on schedule, not when you remember. Tire pressure checked weekly with a real gauge, because underinflated tires cost fuel and cause blowouts. And a blowout on a heavy vehicle is genuinely dangerous. Serpentine belt looked over monthly for cracks and glazing. Coolant checked for level and for color, because rusty brown coolant tells you the system is failing well before it actually fails. Carry a basic toolkit, a good jack, a spare belt, and extra fluids. 10 minutes a week under the hood with a flashlight catches nearly every problem while it's still a $20 part. Trick 3. 75 on the interstate because everyone else is doing 75. A van is a brick. Drag rises with the square of your speed, so the fuel spent shoving air out of the way climbs steeply past 60 miles an hour. Dropping from 75 to 60 on a box-shaped vehicle commonly improves economy by 20 to 30%, but the larger version of this is slow travel. New people move constantly, chasing places they saw in photographs, and burn an entire year's budget on fuel in 3 months. The ones who last stay put. 14 days on one forest road, then a short move to the next spot, and monthly mileage drops from a couple thousand miles to a few hundred. Add a fuel price app to find the cheap stations along the route instead of the convenient ones at the exit. Gas Buddy is free, and it's the only app on this list that pays for itself in a week. Trick 2. Park at 7, put a light on, cook with the side door open, settle in. By 10, 3 people have noticed a vehicle with someone living in it, and one of them has called somebody. Stealth isn't about hiding. It's about being uninteresting. The rules are simple and they work everywhere. Arrive after dark and leave before the lot fills up in the morning. Never let light escape the vehicle, which is what those reflective panels are quietly doing for you at night. Cook inside, never on a table by the sliding door. No chairs, no awning, nothing that reads as camp. Keep the outside plain. No stickers, no ladder rack piled with gear. Move every day or two even when you love the spot, and back into the space so you can pull out immediately if you ever need to. People who follow this get left alone for years at a time. Trick 1. The ones who don't make it aren't lazy and they aren't unlucky. They handle every problem at the moment it becomes urgent, and urgent is always the most expensive moment there is. The ones still out there a decade later run a weekly rhythm instead. One day is town day. That's the gym for a real shower and an hour indoors. Drinking jugs refilled at the supermarket machine, bulk dry goods, laundry, propane topped off if the tank feels light, and 2 hours at the library on internet and paperwork. The entire infrastructure of a life, handled in one trip instead of 6. Then you drive out to the public land spot or the parking rotation, and the alternator charges the batteries on the way. That evening, the thermal cooker goes together so tomorrow's meal is finished before you're hungry. Once a week, the 10-minute engine check: oil, tires, belt, coolant. Every morning, 2 windows cracked and the moisture tubs emptied. Every night, the reflective panels go up before any light goes on. And the engine never idles. Not once. Here's the arithmetic I promised you. Campground fees you didn't pay, $2,000. Restaurant meals cut back to once a week, $1,200. Idling eliminated, $900. Slowing down and staying put, $600. Bottled water replaced with jugs and a filter, $400. Bulk propane instead of green bottles, $200. Senior pass and the federal campground discount, $150. $5,450. And that's before you count the breakdown you didn't have. But the money was never really the point of it. When nothing is urgent, this stops feeling like scraping by and starts feeling like something a person chose. That's the whole difference between somebody who quits in 6 months and somebody still out there 10 years later, parked somewhere quiet with the doors open and the pines out the back. All of this is written down with the checklists and the numbers in the Van Life Savings Manual. Link is in the description below. Somebody watching this tonight is sleeping in a vehicle for the first time in their life. If you know which one of these you'd want them to hear first, put it in the comments. Next video is on screen.